time, in the interest of time, we're going to get started right at 5:30. Good evening. Thank you everyone for being here with us. I'll call the April 20th Measure J meeting to order. Evelyn, can you do a roll call? Oh, no, we have to Pledge of Allegiance, just kidding. Okay. Commissioner Kazan, would you be interested in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance if you don't mind?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. We're never going to harmonize. It's fine. Evelyn, can you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Craig is present. Commissioner Gassan,
Here.
Commissioner Fuderer,
Present.
Commissioner Marshall,
here.
Vice Chairperson Robin,
Yes, here.
and Chairperson Soto.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. So first item, need the acceptance of the agenda. Evelyn, as always, graciously sent that to us. We can discuss the order of the agenda, and we may amend the order and add items, and may remove items from the agenda for discussion. Public comments. Melissa Desmaris, is that staff or is that public comments?
Staff.
Do you have any public comments?
We do not.
We do not. Okay.
And we need a motion to approve the agenda.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion?
Do we need to amend that a bit for the city manager?
You can include them in the welcome comments.
No.
Yeah, that's not necessary.
Okay.
So I second the motion.
Did we get a first? Who motioned?
Oh, I thought,
Oh, motion.
Oh, we have a motion from Vice Chair Robin, a second. All in favor say aye.
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 I think that's everyone. Nays or abstentions? Perfect. Okay, great. We don't have any public comments. We're just gonna jump right through. So welcome comments, at least for me, we'll keep it simple. We have a lot to get through between now and June. Thank you, Evelyn, for finalizing the special session next week. Or is it in like a week and a half?
Yeah, it is.
And definitely encourage all of our commissioners to kind of bring their full presence to these next coming meetings as we finalize the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. I know I definitely have some questions, and I just want to make sure that a lot of the process and questions that I have for council and for city manager Scott Stiles, thank you for being here, that we get this squared away so that we have a really great foundation for next year. With that, I will pass it over to our new city manager. Thanks for joining us 2 meetings in a row. We're so lucky. And we're looking forward to having you here today.
Chair Soto, great to see you again. We ran into each other at my favorite new coffee shop in Palm Springs, and so I love that. Love that little place. What's it? El Jefe or La Jefa?
Jefa is boss, lady boss in Spanish.
That's so now I know. I didn't know that. I just met the owners of that development today at the meeting of the hospitality committee. Great place. So anyway, yes, thank you. As the chair said, this is really an important time for us, and I really appreciate all the work that all of you are doing. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that we did a Measure O sales tax initiative in my former city, and so what you were doing is even more robust than what they called it their Measure O Oversight Committee. And so what you're doing is similar, only kind of at a little higher level. So appreciate all the work you're doing. As I know, Chris will tell us and report back to you later, we're kind of in the throes of budget preparation right now. We're getting ready for a study session with our city council next month, and then I know we'll have, I'm sure at least 2 meetings with our council going over all the details of the budget. And I'm learning from Chris and my 5 bosses on council about everything that goes into the work that you're doing. So I don't think I really had a good appreciation of it the last time I was at this meeting. So I want to be engaged with you, especially at this important time of the year. And if there's anything Chris and I can do, and I see we have Joelle and David and some other folks from our senior staff that are here. So this is all really important stuff, and we're so as the chair said, we're kind of in budget formulation right now, so that's important. So I know you got a busy agenda. I don't want to say too much more, but I'd love to stay on for a little bit if that's okay.
Yeah, we'd love that. I'm sure Chris would appreciate that too. Great. Well, let's jump to it then. Really our main order of business is reviewing the fiscal year for 2023, 24, and also 24, 25. Recognizing this is the first round of discussions, and I'm not expecting staff to have every question answer that I have, but I'm really looking forward to kind of raising all of the things that we're thinking about in terms of the next couple of years. So Chris, do you want to lead us off?
Thank you, Chair. Yep, absolutely. So we have a couple of, in addition to Scott, we've got a couple other staff here and David that are joining us. Melissa's from Police Department and Acting Fire Chief Jason Loya. There's just a couple of big asks in the budget for the Police Department and Fire Department. So I asked them if they wouldn't mind joining. If there's any questions, they'll be happy to jump in and answer them for you all. I'm going to verbalize some of the highlights I put in the staff report, and then we'll go through the numbers and then the project list. And feel free at any time to raise your hand and ask a question. We'll stop at that point and answer questions. But yeah, feel free to be informal and just raise the hand. And if I see the hand raised, I'll call you on call on you for the question. So a couple of highlights. In fiscal year 24, we have upped the streets budget from 6 million to 9 million. So we think that speaking with Joelle, we think that we can meet that $9 million. 3 million of that has been carried over for a couple of years. So we're going to try to spend it in fiscal year 24. We continue to set aside $1 million every year for the community initiated projects. I know that's something that we wanted to talk about potentially increasing. So that'll sure be a discussion item. One thing I kind of thought was neat is in this budget for fiscal year 24 and 25. And by the way, this is a 2-year budget that the commission is reviewing. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew that, wanted to point that out. In the fiscal year 24 and 25, there's a total of 45 projects. The total dollar amount is in the vicinity of $70 million. And by the end of fiscal year 25, we are projecting that 28 of the 45 projects will be completed. So a lot of work to be done in 2 years by Joelle's team and David's team. So I think that's good news to see that completion of that many projects. A couple of the big asks in this budget will be one for the library. As everybody knows, the library got a grant of $7 million, and the Measure J Commission is matching that grant essentially with $7 million. So at the end of fiscal year 24, if the budget is approved, the library will have the $7 million to match their grant of $7 million for a total of $14 million to do some renovation work. The other big ask is the commission has voted to set aside money for the construction of fire station number 1, a new building. At the end of 25, the set aside amount will be just over $14 million. If you go out to 26, they're going to add 9 million for a total set aside for the construction of that building for $23 million. So big dollars there that the commission is putting forth for construction of a new fire station. One thing everybody wants to hear is in fiscal year 24, we're going to add $575,000 to the pickleball pot for a total of $725,000 of funds to go toward pickleball in fiscal year 24. And then lastly, 4 new projects will be introduced. So as we go through the project list, you'll see, and we go through the numbers, you'll see that a lot of the projects are carried over from the budget approval process from last year, but we do have 4 more. One of those is the construction of a police department building to hold their impound vehicles. So they have cover for vehicles that they impound. In addition to that, the police department is asking for a new CAD record system. This was a project that was previously approved by the Measure J Commission a few years ago. There was some dollars spent, but the solution was deemed to be not viable, so the project stopped. The police department wants to introduce that project again at a total amount to be funded of $2.75 million. There is about $1.6 million left over from the prior approved project, and if the commission chooses, that can go toward the 2.75 and then approve the additional funding of about $1 million, a little over $1 million. Then the other 2 projects that are new to this year are going to be convention center projects. We had a couple of those in this year's budget. So the convention center wants to replace their air wall coverings in the Oasis exhibit hall. That is, oh my gosh, I don't have an amount. We'll get to that amount later. I don't have it in my notes. And then the convention center wants to upgrade their marquee to digital signs. So I don't have the amount in my notes either for that, but we'll get to those amounts in the project list. So that'll be similar to the projects that the Measure J Commission funded this year, where we would essentially cut the convention center a check and they would run their own projects, probably with Joelle's assistance. So that's the highlights of the budget. Evelyn, if you can pull up the numbers, please, that would be great. There we go. Yeah, good. Make it big. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to go through where we're at this point in time for this fiscal year. So if you see the 3rd column over where it has actuals through March 2022, 2023, that's where we were at the end of March. So we have total revenue of $12,513,000. The budgeted revenue in the next column over, or actually this is our forecasted revenue in the next column over. So we've adjusted our budget and have developed a forecast, which we think is a little more accurate than the budget numbers at this point. So the forecast, we're expecting about $22.5 million, and we are on target to reach that number. So that's good news. Scroll down on that list. We have spent a little over $3 million in street repairs. We are going to respend the remaining $3 million. So we expect that the street repair budget of $6 million will be met. On the community initiated projects, we'll get to the detail in a bit, but we expect we're at $370,000. We expect to be close to $1 million in dollars spent for our community initiated projects. There's our $200,000 set aside for the airport reserve on aviation fuel. And then on down the line of the typical other columns you see, the Measure J Commission pays, or the Measure J revenue pays for the debt service that was issued a few years ago for the downtown revitalization project. So that's the debt service that the Measure J pays for. And then we have downtown property maintenance and other expenses, that 403,000. What that is that's security, 24/7 security for downtown that Measure J pays for as well. And then in the budget for fiscal year 23, the commission approved $2 million. 1 million of that was to go to the Plaza Theater, and the other million of that was to go toward the cost of replacing the police department, fire department radios. And that total budget for the radios was about 3.5 million. So the Measure J Commission voted to fund $1 million of that. So when it says transfer out, that's what that means. We're transferring the funds out of the Measure J fund into the capital fund for those for the contribution to the Plaza Theater and to fund the radios that were purchased by police department, fire department. And then the last column on there, the 2.67 million, that's just dollars that were spent so far this year on all of the other capital projects that the commission has approved in their budget. And we'll go through that listing in a little bit. So if you go over to the forecast, you can see, 22.5 million in revenue. We do have on the total expenditures line on the way down, almost the very end, 47.77 million. That includes this continuing appropriations of 27.6 million. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail now so we could understand what that 27.6 million means. So Evelyn, if you can scroll down to our project list. So if you look at that first column right there, the estimated balance that we think these projects are going to have at the end of this fiscal year. If you scroll down to the total of that first column, yeah, there we go. I think there's one more. Oh, they're right there. There's a $27.6 million at the very end of the page. So the total of that we think that we're going to end this year with balance remaining on the projects that were approved last year by the Measure J Commission, we'll have $27.6 million left to spend on those projects. Kevin, if you can go back up. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I want to see if anybody has any questions about where we're at to date through March. And if there's any questions on the forecast for the rest of this fiscal year, I'd be more than happy to take any questions at this time before we talk a little bit about budget. And I can't see any hands raised, so just unmute and ask if you have any.
I think Commissioner Craig, I saw his hand up.
I just wanted to make a comment on this. 8 years ago, I was chairman of Parks and Recreation, and I went to the city and I asked for a thing called pickleball. And I told them that we asked for $10,000 for them to be able to fund changing one of the 4 tennis courts at DeMuth Park into 4 pickleball courts. We did a ribbon cutting. So to hear you say today that now it's $750,000 for pickleball, I think the proof was it's everything we predicted it would become. I'm really pleased to see that. And I have a question. When you say 3 million so far on the streets, and we were going from 6 million to 9 million, Joelle, do we feel that we're really covering as everything we can for the citizens of this town, for the streets? Because we hear complaints sometimes about conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a healthy street pavement management plan. We are moving, if you recall, we would spend 3 million, doing our paving. And just last year, we started moving it up to 6 million. Somewhere along the line, we had left 3 million and not spend it. So doing a $9 million project next year is totally feasible. We were very lucky. Granite was able to finish this project that we had this fiscal year, the $6 million in record time with very little disruptions. If I didn't really get a lot of complaints. So yeah, absolutely. The $6 million is about the right amount that we want to be spending every year on pavement management. 9 million, we can do it. It gets us a little bit further. So yeah, I believe we're on track to do what we need to do for the city.
Thank you very much.
Any other, I have a couple of questions and comments. Any other commissioners? Vice Chair Robin, yeah.
I have two quick questions, probably first for Chris. Total fund balance, Chris, forecast out 7.485 million. So that I'm looking at that and processing it as that's unencumbered cash that hasn't been designated for any use whatsoever. So that to the extent that in a future year there happens to be an excess of spending over revenue, you would the city, we would look to the reserve balance of what looks to be 7.485 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's actually 6.19 million, and then
Excuse me.
yeah,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then the 1-2s for the airport. But yes, that is correct. It's
Okay.
what we would for. It's restricted for Measure J projects.
Yes.
Right now, it is unassigned for any project, so it is there to be used if the commission so chooses.
Great, thank you. And a quick question for Joel, following up on Sid's question about paving. Does pick the number, call it 6 million. Does $6 million today still buy what you thought 6 million of paving would buy? Based on recent contracting?
Well, yeah, well, the contract, obviously it has increased, right? It's gone up, costs are up maybe 20-30%. So it does get us a long way.
Okay.
But it's not where it was, say, 2 years ago. But it's $6 million as we move forward. We're completing our new pavement management plan. It's going to do an analysis of the expenditures and what we should be spending a year. And I still feel comfortable that 6 to 7 million is the right number to be paving our streets. What we don't want to do is say, if you give me 20 million, we're going to rip up the entire city. That's not feasible. So, you know, we balance it off. We look at our entire pavement management plan, and in the past, 6 million has been about the number we need. It might grow a little bit, but we're there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to say, Chris, you really explained things well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had question, maybe request, or something to consider for the future. So I think the paving is a really good example of us having like a constant, this is just what it takes to maintain our streets and keep them safe and looking nice. And I would love to have that kind of same mindset for other projects throughout the city, specifically parks. Like, what is the ongoing maintenance cost of our parks? So that way, if there is an additional 6 million, maybe we say, hey, maybe we want to put 2 more million for park maintenance this year. What can we do? Having a ready list of potential maybe even costly maintenance projects. And we haven't really done that with parks. We've kind of looked at it like as needs get very dire and as community members get very upset. But I think the way we approach our streets is very efficient. We all seem to be very much in line. And when there is an opportunity to do more protection of our streets, we take advantage of it, right? Like, we can quickly move forward on that. And I would love to see that with parks. So David, I don't know if that's like a you question or a you request, but anything we can kind of do to streamline some of the maintenance costs. I'm really concerned we don't, we let things get too far and then they become quite expensive. So wanted to flag that as a potential opportunity for kind of like commission streamlining. And then that goes tied to, and this is kind of goes back to the bigger budget discussion of buckets, like spending buckets. This was brought up by council last year around like a Parks and Recs budget. We have a street paving bucket. We have maybe a public safety spending bucket, and kind of keeping things in these general categories. So I'll put that out there. David, I don't know if you have any reaction or any suggestions on how we could get there.
No, I think that's great. It's certainly something that we need to work toward. And I think this would be a really good opportunity to come up with a plan for that. I think that would be a benefit, certainly for the community. To bolster what we're already putting in that fund would certainly make a big difference. That would be great. That would be huge. I think right now, project wise, we're spending around $1.5 million. So So anything you could add would certainly be a big benefit. And I'm happy to have that conversation at any point.
Chair Soto, if I could just chime in for a second. One of the other conversations I've been having a lot with my 5 bosses is just the importance and the need to really publicize the work that Measure J funds are doing. So, you know, when we replace some playground equipment in one of our parks, to your point about Parks and Rec, let's make sure we celebrate that. Let's make sure while a construction project is going that we're talking about, you know, this playground equipment is being replaced with Measure J funds. So maybe use QR codes, maybe direct people to a website that shows information about Measure J and what it's doing. So those are some conversations I've been having with council members, and I think it makes a terrific amount of sense. It just lets people know that, you know, these dollars are going to work and what they're doing for the community. So
yeah, I agree. Transparency and community outreach is huge. Chris, I did have a question around downtown security. Have we always been paying for 24-hour security? In general, this commission has felt uncomfortable paying for staffing.
So I may let Joel chime in on this too, because he's got more history than I do, but I know that we've been paying for it for the last couple of years. So I don't know how it got into the budget, but it has been done for the past couple of years. There's a couple of different security companies, I believe, that we pay for, and it's just all the security for downtown. Some of the security rides golf carts through the area, and some of it's making sure the public restrooms are safe and stuff like that. So that's my understanding of it. Joel, do you have anything to add?
No, really, it's been there for quite a while, but I think the name says it, downtown maintenance, right, and other expenses. So I thought that the fund was being used for maintenance purposes of the downtown area. How it got there and how it was created, I don't recall. Maybe some of the older the folks that have been on the commission.
Yeah, I thought, I mean, I knew it was maintenance, like needs of the park. I don't think I ever realized it was staffing.
Yeah, I think
Amazon, do you have recollection of this?
Yeah, I for my years being on the commission, that's always been there, but it was our understanding it was maintenance. So pressure washing of sidewalks. I don't know, maybe it had to do with broken, street lights or something, anything that had to do with maintenance downtown. This is the first I've ever heard security or personnel.
Let me
that kind of raises a red flag for me that I wouldn't be real behind necessarily paying for personnel. It's really not the mission of Measure J to pay for personnel or a city contract with a vendor like that. If we're concerned about the sunset of Measure J, we need to make sure that we are doing projects that benefit the community. And there are plenty of projects out there that need to get funded that will benefit the community. And you can say everything benefits the community, of course. Security downtown benefits the community. But again, I don't know that residents would see it quite that way. They would probably look at that as something that should be under a different budget or a police budget. So I guess I would want more clarity on that. I'm all for beautification. So if there's a dead palm tree, there's a light that's out, there's an accident that's occurred that took out a light, those things have cost. That to me is pretty. And we need to concentrate a bit more on pretty, I think, in this city. We've kind of let pretty go over the past few years. To me, people see that. They see the city cares when something gets fixed that's broken. So I'm all for continuing that budget, at least in my opinion. We've gotten used to looking at this, but again, I don't think I would be real supportive of security.
I'd like to say that, like Commissioner Gazan, I've been on almost 6 years. I hope to gosh that it's never been about security, that it's about maintenance only, because they have downtown meetings of the downtown businesses with Joy Meredith, and it's the police department that's there, talking to them about the needs and the concerns. Village Fest, police department, they're on overtime, and they cover Village Fest completely. So I'd like to think, and I hope it isn't. So I think that we need to know that. But if there is a form of security that's been designated out of that, I think that needs to come up to the surface and be discussed. It shouldn't be, my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Craig. Commissioner Federer, you're on mute, just FYI. Commissioner Federer, you're on mute.
Takes time to operate this. Okay, I don't know where I learned or heard of this, but I thought that security was a private security paid for by the merchants in that complex. I do know somebody who works there, and he was also working for security at the library. So I'm not sure who pays for that, maybe the library or whatever. But they do a lot of the bathroom observation there, who's going in, who's going out. So I don't have factual information, but that's just always been something that I thought I knew from somewhere. So if we're paying for it, we need to find out why or who is paying for it.
Yep, I will definitely go back and get some history as much as I can. I know the person who processes the invoices has been here for a long time, so she probably has a little bit of history that she can contribute. So let me do that. Let me actually confirm that the security is for what I said it was for. So when I went back and looked, I didn't see. I just looked at this year. I didn't look at any prior years, but I didn't see any maintenance expenses for downtown. So let me just confirm that as well. So let me do a little bit of research, and I'll come back to the commission at the next meeting on the 8th at the special meeting, and then I'll come back there with hopefully a lot more information, and then the commission can mull it over.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Do we want to discuss the earlier presentation, Chris, on your notes on the proposed projects?
I'm sorry, say that again, Chair.
Do you want us to discuss the other projects that you had presented earlier at the start?
Let me go through the 2-year budget, and then when we get through the project, I'm just going to go through the numbers, and then what I thought I would do is move down to the project list, and then we would just have a general discussion on the new projects that were introduced, and then anything else the commission wanted to talk about when it came to any of the projects.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the budget. The first blue column, 23-24. This is fiscal year 24's budget. And we are forecasting $22.77 million of revenue. These forecasts come from our tax consultants. So I'm pretty comfortable putting the numbers in here. The way that the tax consultants give us these numbers is they give us 3 levels. They give us a conservative number, and then they give us a middle number, which they call most likely, and then they give us an aggressive number. So this $22.7 million falls kind of in the middle of conservative and aggressive, and this is what they consider the most likely scenario of revenue that Measure J will collect as of right now for the fiscal year 24. So $22.8 million of revenue. Moving down the line, again, there's the $9 million for streets, the $1 million for community projects, and the $200,000 for the airport reserve. Going down to the debt service, that $3.133 million. Again, that's debt service that pays for the debt that was issued for the downtown revitalization a few years ago. The $650,000 is for security or whatever the commission wants to use that for. And then we expect that this $10.3 million in capital project budget, additional budget. So the 10.3 is made up of additional budgeted dollars for existing projects. It also includes the budgeted dollars for the new projects. So that's the total spend or the total budget for fiscal year 24 for the projects. That $24.2 million, Evelyn, if you could scroll down, we'll show everybody what that means. So in that second column, where it says second column, fiscal year 23-24 budget, the total expenses is $24.2 million. That includes our debt service, that includes our streets, that includes everything. So I just want, and we'll get to these individual projects in just a minute. I just want you all to know and see that there is, there is specifics behind these numbers. So if you can scroll back up, Evelyn. And then I'll quickly go over the second year, the fiscal year 25. It's basically the same data. We get a little bit of an increase in revenue. Let me jump back to 24's revenue real quick. You can see that we're forecasting 22.5 million, and the budget for 24 is 22.8 million. Our tax consultants are not expecting a large increase in the sales tax revenue for the fiscal year 24. It's only around 1% or less. And I haven't got to talk to them yet, but my inclination is that they may be factoring in some sort of downturn in the economy. Because if you look at the 25 and 26 and 27, we're getting 4 to 5% growth in our tax revenue. But this year in 24 over 23, they're only expecting about 1%. So that gives me an indication that maybe they're expecting a little downturn in the economy, something similar to a lot of people are forecasting in their market outlooks. So now move on to 25, 23.65 million in revenue. We're back to our $6 million budget in our streets, $1 million in community initiative projects, and the $200,000 set aside. There's our debt service of 3.1 as we scroll down this column, 675,000 for security or maintenance, and then added budget for our new projects in fiscal year 25 is 11.38 million. And I can tell you most of that 11.3 million, as we will see in our detailed project listing, is a $9 million set aside for the construction of fire station number 1. So as we go out through these years, we are building our budget, but most of the budget that we're building for our projects is really going to be achieved by the end of 25. And again, as I stated in my highlights earlier, Joelle is expected to complete 28 of our 45 projects by the end of fiscal year 25. And so we'll note that $22.38 million, if we'll scroll down to the project list. Let's go to our fourth column over where it says fiscal year 24-25 budget. And at the bottom, you'll see there's that $22.38 million. So scroll back up real quick, Evelyn. We'll just look at fund balance real quick, as Vice Chair Robin brought up earlier. So at the end of fiscal year 25, we're still seeing a little bit of a surplus. 2.759 million is unassigned or unused. And then, of course, you have the 1.69 million for the airport reserve for a total of 4.45. And as you see, as we get out to fiscal year 26 and 27, although, we're not approving anything for those years, you can see that the budgeted amount for capital projects goes down significantly. Our unassigned fund balance goes up significantly. So that's just something to consider as we move through our budget process. I'm going to stop right there and see if anybody has any questions before we move on to looking at some of the individual projects. Commissioner Craig?
Possibly because my attendance has not been great, this was already discussed, but and I'm not questioning the reasons, but can you tell me why they are relocating Station 1 instead of rebuilding it where it is?
If Acting Fire Chief Loya is on, I would like to have him answer that question.
Hi.
Good evening. Yes, I think the terminology is just a little off there. It is going to be a construction of a new facility. Station 1 is a historical building, which does limit our abilities to grow and remodel there. So the intent with that is having a new facility allows us to grow with the department. We've outgrown this a lot of the size of the stations. It'll get us ADA compliant, accommodate the additional staffing, and as well our administrative headquarters here over at Fire Station 2. We've outgrown that as well. So this will be all-encompassing, state-of-the-art facility concept, innovative, energy efficient, all the things the city stands for. That's what we're looking at designing here for this station.
Thank you. Is there a plan for what's going to be done with, when you say Station 1 is a historic building, is there plans what it's going to be used for in the future, or?
We haven't gotten that far. So some of us considered some kind of maybe a museum of some sort. We don't know, but I'm sure we'll be open to a lot of input and ideas when we get there.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Appreciate the support.
Any other question, Vice Chair Robin?
Hi, Chris. This might be a question to trickle along as you go into project by project basis, but something that I'm probably not the only one that noticed, but there are a handful of project costs that are not included in your forecast and that relate to the available balance in the forecast. So the cushion might be consumed by adjustments that account for, and again, you might be going through this later, so you can tell me to leave the detail to later.
No, go if you want to go ahead and get into it, that's fine.
Yeah, real quickie. So as headlines, the revised CAD project amount, you list the old funds to be spent, but not the new funds requested.
Correct.
There's a project that dropped off $150,000 for San Rafael Drive turf. There's
I think
a
that's
project.
Let me make
Sure,
sure. But I believe here's the San Rafael Drive turf is project 2226. On it's 150,000.
Yeah. So is that just in suspended animation?
Yeah. Yeah. What that is, if Evelyn, if you could bring up so you see the 27.65 million number down there in our detail, or when Evelyn brings it back up, we'll see. Okay. So that if you look at the fourth column over in the darker gray at the bottom, that 27.65 million. So the San Rafael turf, the 150,000 is part of that 27 million that we're carrying over into the next year.
Okay.
Okay. So it is, so all that 27.6 million for that first column of projects, that's what that is. Now you are correct about the CAD RMS PD amount. I did not include the difference between the 275 million and the 1.6 million that we're carrying over. So if the commission decides to approve that or wants me to include it in there for the next special meeting budget session, I will do that.
Okay. All right. And then last as a catch-all, the community projects, that many of which really haven't gotten momentum yet. One in particular is the Victoria Park shade structure that I think the requested amount was something like 80,000 or 78,000, and the soft estimate that staff has is closer to $250,000 if I remember correctly. So there might be some snowballing that happens in those numbers that pushes into that reserve in a significant way.
Evelyn, can you scroll down to the community initiated project list? And to that point, Vice Chair Robin, I will say that Joel and I have talked about one thing I'd like the commission to consider is I think we need to bump up these costs in here for projected increases. And I think we've talked about that before as a commission, or you all have, I'm sorry, you all have talked about that before as a commission. And I think that's something we should seriously consider. Projects that really haven't been vetted yet or scoped out yet, we should probably add an X percentage amount of cost to them in anticipation that those will increase. Because as you all have seen, as we know, whenever we get bids back, they're always in excess of what we've got budgeted here. And, we might want to try to get a little bit closer to what we think some of these costs might be. Mayor Pro Tem brought it up in the last council meeting. And, Joel and I, both agree he's going to probably add some cost in his 5-year CIP plan. And I think we should consider adding X percentage here to those projects as well.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you and also Joel about that. And I mean, I would say that this is an issue not even just in community initiated projects, but all projects, right? And so Joel, I didn't know if you had, I know that you brought this up for us to kind of just like start thinking about last month. But given that there is an unallocated amount right now of it looks like 6 million, and then we have 3 and about 2.8 for the 2 budget years we're considering. Like, is there an X percent that we should be considering for, potential materials increase or potential costs? Like, I'd love to us just have like a cushion in the overall budget rather than maybe doing it per project. I don't know. Does it matter? I'm open to your thoughts, but it might be helpful for us when we say we have 22 million, maybe it's actually 19, right?
Right. Budgets or prices of projects are coming in anywhere between 20 to 40% higher than any anticipated. The community initiated projects are they stand on their own. They're unique because they came from somewhere else outside of City Hall, right? People just thought they knew what the money was, and we just put it down because it was an application and we ran with it. And since inception, I always said, we need to vet these projects, and it's, the reality is every time we vet it, prices come in higher. So I don't know what the answer is. If say we increase everything by 20%, project by project, that's going to vary significantly. It may be 20%, it may be 40%, or maybe 10%, because just depending on the nature of the project, right? Electrical equipment is costlier than just asphalt or concrete, the increases essentially. So I like having a budget, or as you were talking earlier, some sort of line item that we could bump up our project. And it's a number that we hold, right? We hold $1 million so that in the project we can, or whatever it is, so that I can increase my costs. I know I mentioned to before, every single project, it's kind of redundant or hard for me to come back and say, Measure J, can I spend $10 more because, the price increase. So I was going to ask permission to be able to increase my cost without having to come within reason, right? If the project doubles, then maybe I don't move it forward. But if it's a 20-30% increase from what we anticipate, I just use the money that's already allocated as a line item, right? As you guys were saying, you want to carry a parks line item for the future. Maybe that's $1 million, $2 million. For essentially covering cost increases, maybe we include $1 million, and that would be distributed over the projects as I award them. Because that cost doesn't happen, all at once. It's varied as we get our projects out to bid. And the economy, if it slows down, the price might come down as well. So there's not one answer, but you as a commission can say, let's just pick, say, $1 million or $2 million, hold it there for any price increases, and city engineer can tap into that fund as projects come in. Within reason, within 20, 30, 40%. And if it's increased any that, then you come back to the commission and ask permission to spend that money. Of course, it always goes back to council for approval.
No, I appreciate that. Any comments from commissioners or questions? I personally just like the, line item cushion. I think that makes the most sense. But I'm open to my colleagues' feedback. Vice Chair Rob?
I'll just add to that we can refine a mechanism that makes sense either on a project by project basis or a catch-all contingency line. But I think it would be naive of us not to have something substantial lined up in each operating year, given what we've seen year over year.
Yeah.
And it just makes things harder for staff.
Absolutely. Seems like a small thing that will go a long way in Joel's process of approvals. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I want to be mindful of time. We have 6:20. We haven't even gotten to the project questions yet. So if not, can we do that next, Chris?
Yeah, I'd say, I think, however you want to work this, Chair Soto, we can go ahead and begin discussion on projects. Talk about the new projects that are introduced, talk about funding the PD project. So I'll just leave it kind of open to you, Chair Soto, to begin the discussion.
Well, I'll
Evelyn, I'm sorry, Evelyn, can you scroll back up to the first page of the project list? Oh, not there. The first, yeah. There we go. Oops. Yeah, right here. Well, I think if you want to start here, we can kind of work our way through this. And so the very first column is, of course, the projects that were approved in last year's plan. That was year one. The second column here, when you see that budget there, that budget is additive to the first column. So for example, on project of the main library renovations, in the very first line, the commission approved 4.138 million last year, and then we're going to add 2.9 million to that this year. And then if there was anything to add in the fourth column, that would also be additive to the first two columns. So that's kind of the way how this flows. And then I'll just sort of leave it open to discussion.
So let me really real quick jump in. So the money you have before you, at least for the library, the 2.9 just completes the grant funding, the matching funds for the grant. It doesn't incorporate any money that we want to set aside for the library expansion or for the bigger library projects. I wanted to be clear there. I think there's a decision to be made if we want to spend or put a lot more dollars into the library to set it aside for construction, or there's going to be a different mechanism essentially to build the library project. But here, if we're talking about the library, a discussion should be had if the commission wants to put aside money for the bigger project, the renovation and the expansion, versus what this money is actually for, which is a matching funds for the grant.
But the matching funds for the grant is for a renovation, right? Or we're.
And Joel, if I could chime in a little bit, if I remember our discussion, isn't there a couple different parts to this? One is all the retrofit work and renovation work that maybe Chair Soto was just mentioning. And then there's the additional potential expansion and other renovation work that may have been designed. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah. So the 7 million that you have in front of you, that it is a matching amount for the grant we received to be able to retrofit the library in its current state. It really is not focused on expansion or adding anything other than what was applied for in the grant. So that's what the 7 million that you have before you is for. If the commission wanted to set additional money aside for the expansion or renovate or redesign or anything, this would be the time to do it. And the amount has to be decided, how much money that is.
See a couple hands. Commissioner Gazan?
So Joel, in this instance, then could we just line item the library like we've done with streets, for example, and just say $2 million or $1 million or whatever is appropriate every year just goes to the library.
Yeah, that's what would happen here. Yeah, that's what we were doing in the past. If you recall, there was a library where we were trying to
Right.
see that all got cleaned up with the COVID. That's essentially what we're asking here again, or what I'm asking. If we're going to start that process again, here is a time to do it in year one, which 23, 24, and 20. How much money do we want to put aside a line item for the library expansion?
So I don't know if it's appropriate to say this right now, and then I'm going to dovetail off of what Chair Soto said earlier. I really feel like down the road and looking at the future, we need to simplify Measure J spending. And this comes a little bit from the previous city manager, and that is, kind of a push to downsize all of our commissions at the city, free up some time of staff, maybe have shorter meetings. And then the feedback that we got from city council almost a year ago, where maybe it's appropriate for Measure J dollars to be spent in very specific buckets and nothing else gets considered. And that the revenue that comes in from Measure J can easily be spent on areas of streets, which has a huge public benefit, public safety, police and fire for those projects. So, we're going to get to those. Parks, encompassing anything to do with parks, including even buildings that are on those parks, including the swim center and the pavilion if it needs renovation or whatever. And then, of course, the library. Those would be the main buckets. There might be some miscellaneous. We've got, obviously our community projects. We have the airport and the downtown maintenance. And maybe this is a way to just simplify this money. And even looking at community projects, we've talked about how we wanted to increase that budget from 1 million to 3 million. But if we have a bunch of community projects, how can we even get them done if we don't have staff to project manage those projects? And so maybe one way of looking at community projects is they become grants. And similar to what we did for the Mizell Senior Center, where they said, hey, we need a new kitchen and we'll take care of everything.
Yeah.
And other similar projects like that, where we basically cut a check. The downtown theater is a great example. We cut a check, they spend it, it goes to a great cause, it benefits the public good. Mizell Kitchen benefits the public good, they manage their own project. We just give them a blank, not a blank check, but we give them a certain amount and it's done. I think those are things moving forward. I won't be here for that, but I think as this commission moves forward, this makes the most sense. It will take out a lot of, as we through attrition drop off some of these other projects that are listed here, that Measure J monies are very streamlined and are very visible to, I think, the biggest public benefit, because people seem to care the most about streets, public safety, and our parks. And believe me, in those buckets, there is definitely enough need that it can gobble up all of the funds. So I'm putting that out there again. Again, this would maybe be something that council needs to be on board with. I think moving forward with community projects, we have to look at that too in a very thoughtful way, because these community projects came in with such imaginary numbers, as Joel was talking about, and then they explode and they're way more cost than what was anticipated. And they take a lot of project management and a lot of time, and a lot of them are gonna take a long time to get complete. I much rather see things get spent that get completed by that organization within the city in a timely manner. So that's my 2 cents on it. I think it makes sense. I think it would streamline a lot of all of this budgeting and the numbers. And the rest gets picked up by general fund, as general fund has to cover so much anyway. So I leave it with that. And again, this is not my idea. This was brought up by council a year ago, and there seemed to be some good consensus from city council about this. And maybe this needs to be something that, again, needs to be presented to council for them to approve. And then we can talk amongst ourselves as a commission whether we want that community project budget to go from 1 to 3 million. And then how best to handle if we increase that budget with realistic projects from the community that the city can realistically get done in a fairly short amount of time.
Yeah, I think the streamlining we're hoping makes the work of the staff so much easier. We're hoping. Vice Chair Robin, I think I saw your hand up, right?
Yes, my memory is not great, but I'm zeroing back onto the library. So we have lined up over from 23 through 25, $10 million allocated for that line item. In the context of the future building, the future scope, is there an ask or a whispered ask and a timeline of when more money would be appealed of us?
I'm going to defer to Joelle.
So that is the big question. I believe, and I don't know if Scott, we might want to chime in here, that the library boards and commissions had worked with Jeannie, the librarian, to bring forward a request of council to seek architects to develop a full scope for the library, right? All the different new things that they've been wanting for quite a while. And council approved that, and we are currently actively seeking an architectural firm that'll come in and sort of guide us through that process. As that process goes forward, I have to deliver by 2026 the retrofit project. The idea is that the retrofit project, if it would have stood alone, I think it would have been good. We would have been able to get in there, retrofit, do what we needed to do, get out. But I think as the project evolved, or has been, I guess, requested to be done, is to expand it, do additions, do remodel certain areas that aren't really covered with that scope. So if I'm going to be remodeling or retrofitting the library by 2026, we are going to be spending more dollars if we design certain aspects that aren't covered by that grant. So I don't have a good handle on what those costs are. What I need to complete is in 2026, I need to deliver the infrastructure upgrades, the retrofit. But that project could continue as it expands, right? So I don't have a good answer for you because I don't know what the full scope of the project is going to be, because that's yet to be determined as well. I don't know if I made that any clear or not.
Oh, well, no, it's yes, the clarity or the lack of clarity is all you have, and it sort of reinforces my own view on what Measure J faces when it's proposed that we create a deep bucket, a multi-year bucket for a huge project that doesn't have a timeline or a budget yet. And I don't mean to sound melodramatic, but we do have these conversations oriented around big projects in advance of knowing what we really are being asked. That's all. End of speech.
Well, and maybe I could chime in, Vice Chair Robin, and also to Commissioner Gazan's comments. My experience is, and I look at some of these lists here, there is an extensive list of projects. And I think it is good in general if we can eventually get to a smaller number of projects, get some complete, get them off the list, not add new ones, and then focus on, we've got a couple really big projects on the horizon. Doing the library renovation is going to be a lot of money. Rebuilding a brand new fire station and fire headquarters is going to be even a much larger amount of money. And usually when you're doing projects of that scope, and this is something Chris and I have talked about, is, and you need to get projects of that scale done. You know, usually what happens is you go out to the bond market, you do a bond financing, and you encumber the money, and the rating agencies and the bond financing companies want to know what your payment schedule is, but you issue the debt. And one of the commitments of how we're going to repay that debt over the next 30 years would you know, usually be through something like Measure J commitments. But then you assemble quickly, I think is what Commissioner or Vice Chair Robbins getting at. That's the way you get your money committed quickly so that you can start the project. And we're dribbling off $1 million here, $1 million here for the fire station project. And, you know, at that rate, it could take us 20 years before we get a pot of money big enough to build a facility of that size. It's going to really, you know, take that, you know, when we go out to do some estimating for this fire station and the headquarters, it's going to be a lot of money. It's not going to be cheap, and it's going to make, I'm going to guess, the library renovation project you know, look relatively inexpensive. So, you know, I think to all of your points is trying to get focused on really prioritize projects, what's important, and then some bond financing strategies that we're going to have to really think about. We're going to have to come back to the commission. We're going to have to talk about what some of the costs are. And then maybe it's not so much trying to figure out where to put dollars into this pot or that pot for this small project or that small project, but maybe we've gone to the bond rating agencies to figure out how to build a $60 million fire headquarters. And to do that, we're going to have to, our debt retirement is going to be $3 million a year for the next 30 years to pay that off. Crystal, I'm just making these numbers up, but that's a way to, you know, to finance and get the project funded. So those are just kind of my 2 cents about it, but I do think it takes some prioritizing and then some bond financing strategizing.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that kind of goes to my point of focusing Measure J on these bigger projects that have huge benefit for the community. I mean, obviously, a library is huge. A fire headquarters and a new fire station serves the community. It attracts firefighters to our community. Parks, which would get a little weedier because it's going to be smaller projects within parks. But I just think it simplifies our mission moving forward. And again, it's going to take some time. We've got a lot of little projects. And again, I think it's reevaluating down the road how community projects, how we want to fund those or what they look like down the road, because I don't think it's a very good thing. It was good, but I don't think it was the best way to handle this, what we did last year, because I think it just was too many projects and all of them are way under budget. And I think it's just overwhelming for staff. And I much rather see projects that are more grant-based, like Mizell Center, where you just cut a check and it's done, and they get it done, and they get it done quickly. We don't have to, you know, go through the minutia of the city having to go through so much to get a project complete. So again, my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, so much that I agree with. A couple of things to kind of keep in mind and to flag. Community initiated projects, this isn't the first time that we did it. We've done it before as an opportunity to gather community input. And there are some community needs where there isn't a fiscal sponsor or a lead organization that can lead that work. It was Shade at Victoria came from parents. And now we have that budget going to Public Works to be included in the new playground. But that request came from parents in the community initiated projects. And so I do think that there's value in gathering community input. I think it is a huge lift, and I think we should be honest with ourselves of how often we do that. Maybe it's every 4 years and not every 2 years, because that's how long hotspots took anyway. And maybe it's less of a, a dollar amount, and maybe we just try to vet 25% of our list every year and see what we can fund based off of, the categories of them. I think there's ways to reframe how we prioritize, how we vet them, how we put them through, but there is, I think, a lot of value in having an open process where we solicit community feedback that comes from a variety of different places. So I just kind of want to put that out there, that I think we can be really creative on how we make it simpler for staff, and making sure that that's part of it. That being said, there were 4 new projects that came to us for the first time. So I do want to make sure we spend a little bit of time talking about that. There was the police department impound building, the CAD, revamped CAD projects, and then 2 convention center projects.
So
Given that we also have the fire chief, I don't know if we also, if there's any pressing Fire Station 1 questions that we want to also include in that.
I want to clarify, when we hear the word new projects, those projects were included in my 5-year CIP.
Oh, okay.
The goal really is to not introduce any new projects this year. We aren't introducing, from my perspective anyways, it's new as we're developing the budgets this year that weren't funded last year. I think that's sort of the way the term new came from Chris, but those projects were brought forward last year as within my 5-year CIP. You're only looking, essentially last year, we looked at year 1. So this year, we're looking at year 2 of my 5-year CIP, right? So now it's just, these are year 1 projects that for my 5-year CIP. These
were projects slated to be presented at year 2, would that be?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if we were
I appreciate
going
that.
back in last year, I would have, so in my book, if you pull out the 5-year CIP, those projects are in there. So we can, if you want to go back to the list of them, that would be great, and then we can walk through them.
Yeah, and maybe I think the agenda, Evelyn just sent it out, but if you could send out that 5-year CIP, I think that'd be helpful when we're looking at these too. Thank
The
you.
link to, we have it. It's in our, we'll send you a link.
Mhm.
So the police department impound building, it's a project that I know the police have wanted for quite a while. Right now, the vehicles that they impound are open to the environment. There's only a gate around them. It's in dire shape, if you will. So I think with the money that we're budgeting, I could put a roof over the impound building and enclose it using like a metal shade structure. I've actually gotten a quote, kind of not through the city, but I was doing a private project and I asked for a quote for a building, and it was reasonable, and within the money that I'm budgeting here for that project, I could build it. So it's a good project to move forward, and good project to fund.
Where's that located, Joel?
Actually, in the city yard.
And this would be a brand new building?
Well, it's sort of a roof structure, but it would be enclosed on 3 sides to protect it from the elements, and open on 1 side to bring in the vehicles.
And does this include, I know right now from Alejo, you can see kind of the junkyard.
That's sort of the impound building. That is the impound building, or the impound yard.
Right, and that includes like police cars that are smashed up as well, or?
No, and Melissa can help me out here, but no, it's more for evidence, essentially. It's just
Okay.
as when a vehicle is taken on in a crime or something.
Vice Chair Robin, I saw your hand.
Yes, could you expand on that, either Joel or Melissa, the purpose of it? When I see the vocabulary of impound building, I think it's vehicles that have been towed, and accordingly, I'm not really concerned about the elements for those cars, for those trucks, for those
It's in
damaged
evidence
vehicles.
yard. Yeah, I think
I'm not sure if she's still on, but I could probably answer that if Melissa's not on.
She
She actually has lost her voice. So David, if you could speak for her, that'd be great.
Sure, certainly. So really what the impound is, that is for a myriad of things. It could, usually it's vehicles that are involved in investigations, could be a murder, could be a drug seizure, could be a fatal traffic accident, things, and these vehicles must be secured. You know, no one can tamper with it. It's got to be a secured location. And sometimes these cases go on for years. So really, just to give you an idea, those are the kind of things that are in that. It's not an impound as that you would think of, like, you know, someone's car got towed because they parked in the wrong spot. That is certainly not what this is.
It's an evidence yard.
There you go. Absolutely.
And I know this name has been carried forward for a while, so it's really the evidence.
Yeah.
For the
Exactly.
other equipment that gets seized.
Is there a possible funding source from the state or from the feds for a structure like this?
I can't answer that, but
Melissa, if you can type it in, I personally, from
I'm not aware of it.
projects I've seen, I don't know that there would be something to be funded.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any, and I apologize for my voice.
Hmm.
I'm not aware of any funding source for that.
I think if right now I'm just fuzzy, I believe I brought it even forward to try to get earmarked from our from our local representatives or state representatives or even the federal representatives. And I believe they said that was not a good use. They would not really qualify for federal earmarks.
All right. Well, I would echo that the revising the nomenclature is really helpful. Makes a big difference, at least in my perspective.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, because I was obviously confused on it too.
So build evidence building. We'll change it in our project name.
Yeah, it just.
And how large
yeah, and I guess
of a
the
building
thing
are we
too,
looking at?
It's like almost barely a building, because I was just like really confused as to the cost of it as well.
It's the building that would be at 70 feet wide by about 200 feet long. If you've seen a metal structure, those metal buildings, right? Shops that are metal that typically are open all the way around. That's the type of structure that we would be putting there. It'd be, you know, heavy duty steel. And like I said, I got a quote not through the city just because I was very curious as I was working with the private firm for a personal matter, and the cost was, you know, in between $600,000 to $800,000. So I'm asking for $580,000, and I'm also using capital funds as well to match it. So I'm setting aside about 1.1 million total, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, so this is not the only source of funds that I'm trying to get to build the building.
Okay, that's good to know too.
So RMS, I don't know if you want to go through that, Melissa.
The CAD, I'll try to give it a shot, and if she feels like it, she can add to what I'm going to say. So I don't know much about these either, but Melissa wrote me a little blurb on it. It's basically plays a vital role in capturing, documenting, and storing all the law enforcement calls that come into the dispatch center. It captures critical data related to each call. It ensures the dispatchers are aware of all the available resources and all of the calls pending. So I think it allows for the dispatchers to store all the data that they get for these calls, to dispatch the officers correctly. And just allows for, I think the system that they have now is very antiquated. It's been in place since 2007. So the technology's basically got them are way behind. And so this will help in that. And I see Acting Fire Chief Loya's got his hand up, so I'm going to let him speak.
Yeah, good evening. I could also speak on behalf of the fire department. Tails into that as well. That CAD, computer aided dispatch, all that call data goes to us. It is a hub, not only for both police and fire, but for dispatching. But all that data, there's a lot of interfaces to a lot of other programs that we use, and the existing system we're on now, it is anytime we want to use a new program, we have to create an interface from scratch, and that vendor has to develop it so it can talk to the other programs. And it just keeps getting more expensive as we add more technology to do our jobs more efficient and safer. So having a more current program will streamline that, bring them up to speed in the so to say, the technology era more current. So it's definitely long overdue, and it's the foundation of what both our organizations do and how we respond to incidents. Thank you.
This is a question. Oh, Chair or Commissioner Gazan.
Well, I mean, you might have the same question. I mean, we already had approved this. So Joel, just correct me if I'm wrong. We approved more than 1.6 million, correct? Like 2.7?
Yeah, I believe if I have my numbers right, that the original project was around 2.5 million. There was about $800,000 spent on that original project. And then like we talked about earlier, the solution was deemed not to be viable. And so the project discontinued.
So what happened with that vendor and the 800,000 that we lost? What happened there?
I can't speak to that. I don't know, Melissa, if you can go ahead. If not, we'll get some history and come back with that answer next week.
I can. I know that there was a little over $800,000 that was encumbered for that project. And not that entire amount was spent towards that. There was some money that was paid to the vendor and then to a third party that was helping us consult on this. But there is the remaining balance, I believe, of that was 1.6 million. And we got into this project and we realized that it was simply not going to be a viable solution for the police department or the fire department. So after consultation with both departments and the city attorney and city representatives, we opted to not continue any further down that path. And so now we're looking to do a needs assessment so that we make sure that we're going with a system that's going to work for us, and then that full integration.
So what total amount of money do we need to complete this project?
We're looking at an estimate of 2.75 million. That includes a full needs assessment, the build out, the implementation, the integration, everything from start to finish for this project.
And hopefully no more costly. Yeah, just okay. So, I mean, again, this was something we approved. I have no issue with this. It's unfortunate of what happened in the last few years as far as money spent.
Yeah, it's set us back some time.
Pretty expensive. Okay, and then again, I'm just looking at the time. So do we want to spend the last few minutes starting our conversation around the convention center? That's
Sure. You want to scroll down, Evelyn, to the second page and talk about that? Joel, I really don't know much about these projects. I read the blurb in your CIP. If you could just give them a little color, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, it's very similar to what we gave them money to do as well. The convention center hall acoustic tiles, essentially, they're trying to replace the wall coverings in the convention center. I think it says 322 panels. I was given the information, so I just brought it forward. And then they want to replace the marquee. They want to upgrade the marquee to a new digital sign. These are asks from the convention center. And that's the extent of what I know about what they want to do. And
this was listed in the 5-year CIP as well.
Yeah. So they brought forward, I believe it was 4 or 5 projects, and we only funded 1 or 2, I believe, last year. And the other ones were going to be pushed to the next fiscal year, which is this fiscal year today that we're talking about, the new fiscal year. So they brought it forward, asking for approval from Measure J. and the commission can decide to fund it or not fund it.
Commissioner Craig.
Joel, I'd just like to get your opinion on this marquee upgrade, 160,000, in your professional opinion. Is this a good expenditure? Meaning, is this gonna cover the next 5 years of any new things that can come into that type of signage? Are we getting the best?
That's hard for me to answer because convention center marquees are not my forte. I don't know if David has any experience with them. I'm simply taking what the convention center folks brought forward. I've also
Help us.
they've experienced everything's escalating prices, so I don't know that they've budgeted this properly. So I can't speak to the funding amount, nor whether it's if it's enough to cover a new marquee that will last for a while. David, you got any insights on marquees?
I haven't had to do one of these in quite some time. It was probably 5-6 years ago, and it wasn't to this size. That number, could not tell you if that's a good number, honestly.
Okay, based on the fact that I'm a layman, and you've all three commented on it, I'm all for giving them exactly what they want. If they said 200,000, I would say fine. But I would do it based on the fact that they've said, here's the company that's doing it. Here's an example of some of the signages they've done. I don't like to see them get 160,000 and say, well, I don't know if that was the best sign over what they had. I'd like, I don't think it's our responsibility. I think it's their responsibility to go back and say, this is what we're proposing.
And we could definitely have them come in and talk about it. We can ask them for more information on it and bring it forward. Yeah, so I that's about the extent of what I can present today on both of those projects.
I'm not trying to be picky. At the same time, I think if they're getting 160 or whatever the amount is, it should be the best thing that's out there.
I would want to bring them forward to this meeting, to the next meeting, to discuss that request.
Okay.
Vice
I can-
Chair Robin, did you have a question?
Yeah, a comment really, and this is I'm probably repeating myself from the last time this showed up. I'm uncomfortable when I see a request from a revenue-based operation asking for deferred maintenance funds. And these seem like items that the convention center should know how to budget for and fund on its own operations, unless I'm missing something there. Because a point that Commissioner Gazan made earlier, I really appreciate, because I think that Measure J is a source of strategic capital. It's thematic, it's strategic, it changes how the community experiences and lives. And paying for tiles and a sign for an operation that should be paying for its tiles and its signs doesn't make sense. Coming to Measure J and asking for a technology backbone or something transformative to make the convention center a more competitive operation as it competes with other markets, that's a different conversation than help us pay our bills for routine expenses.
Commissioner Marshall? Might be our last comment of the night. You're muted. Commissioner Marshall, you're muted. Still muted.
Muted.
There you go. I would just like to agree with the last comment. They do make money and they're not cheap to rent, as the city knows. This is something, yeah, and the marquee upgrade, what are we paying for? Is it bigger? Is it better? Totally agree. May I ask a side note question of whoever in the staff would like to answer it?
Sure.
Sure.
We'll all defend each other.
It's kind of, well, one, I'm gonna make one real quick comment before I forget. Commissioner Robbins, I agree. This is convention center comes up every year. It has since 2011. So maybe that's one of our buckets that we really scrutinize. I mean, we are an oversight committee. The offhand question is talking about even budgets and what can be bonded. In 2011, the city was like maxed out for bonding. Do we have any bonding capability now?
I believe that we do, yes.
You know how much?
I do not off the top of my head, but I can try to figure out what that ceiling is. I believe it's in our ACFR and our audit, but I don't know the number off the top of my head. But we've talked about it a little with our bond counsel and our our financial advisor.
Okay, great. I'd love, and if nothing but personal interest, but I think also in our planning on how we allocate funds. So what is the capability on bonding a new fire station, and where, you know, the money that we have to provide would best augment accomplishing that goal? Thank you.
I will
That's all
say
got.
on the debt question, I will say that we are paying off $50 million of the debt in the next 5 years and $100 million of debt in the next 10 years. So that leaves us even more room probably.
Helpful.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Well, Joel, I think an invitation to the convention center might be appropriate, or even just if they want to send you more details. I think there's definitely several questions around that. We are out of time and we are going to be continuing this conversation. Chris, yeah.
I was just going to go over some open items if I might real quick.
Yeah, real quick.
So real quick, I'm gonna do some security research. We need to, I'd like the commission to consider, do we want a bucket of funds for cost increases? Do we want to have a line item for park maintenance or downtown maintenance? I am going to increase the PD, the CAD RMS to 2.75 million. Do we want to set aside any more money for the library renovation? Do we want to increase the community initiated projects from 1 million to another amount? And I will bring Rob, the convention center GM, to the next meeting. So I will throw in some numbers for these open items just so the commission can see what it looks like with real numbers in there. And then hopefully you all can consider those or not, or, you know, consider whether you want to include them or not include them at our next meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a great starting point for our next meeting. Commissioner Gazan, last one for real.
Yeah, really quick. I mean, is it necessary to bring in someone from the convention center? I just don't think this is necessary. I don't think this should even be considered by our commission. It's a profit center. It's minimal. It's maintenance. I mean, if we had a decaying convention center, you know, consider the way Commissioner Robin was saying, like, you know, we need to attract people, but we've got a beautiful convention center, and this is some simple upgrades. I just hate to waste someone's time or give them hope. I feel it's kind of not right to have them come and present when I just don't think this doesn't fall in the 4 buckets that I think this commission needs to get to. We've got tens of millions, we've got $100 million easily in streets, public safety, parks, library alone. And why consider something that's so minimal? And what is the public good for the community? I don't see it. It's good for tourism. It's good for the tourists that come to the convention center. But this isn't a building that's got a roof caving in.
And I think if I may just jump in, I think they asked for 5 projects, and if the commission, I think, felt that these 2 were not adequate to be supported, then the commission can vote to not fund them, and we can move on.
Then I make a motion that we not consider this at this time.
We have a motion on the floor to drop the convention center projects. Do we have a second?
I would
Second.
second.
Okay,
Lots of seconds.
second. Can you, we need a vote on that? I guess so.
Mhm.
I'd just like to confirm the recommendation that was set forth in the agenda, and whether we can do that at this point, or maybe do that at the next meeting.
We can do it, probably better to do it at the next meeting with the entire.
Because the recommendation was not to make a formal decision at this time. It was for review, so we can't make a.
Okay.
That's correct.
Helpful,
I will
helpful.
not invite the convention center GM to our next meeting. I will not do that. And we'll just continue the discussion to determine whether we want to leave them out or not.
And if I might add, the projects that I've listed there, the commission has seen them before. They are part of my 5-year CIP, but if there's any questions, anything that you'd like me to answer between now and then, please send me some emails. I'll do some research and have answers for you.
Yeah, I think this was a great starting point, and I think that's an important point, Joel. You know, we can always send staff our questions beforehand, so they have the time to bring those details forward, and we don't drag this out over more meetings than is necessary. So thank you to staff. This was a really important first step for our budget conversation this year. We are 6 minutes past time. I appreciate everyone's patience, and we'll all talk real soon in a couple weeks. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.